I know it's only mid-month and here I am with pickup videos already, and that's because out in the wild this month I found some fantastic things that I just had to pick up at great prices. And if you want to see what I've picked up so far this month, you just wait until after these. Hello friends and welcome back to Generation Pixel, and if you're new to the channel, well firstly, thanks for clicking on that video, and secondly, I hope you enjoy this short pickups video, because anyone who's watched this channel over the last 18 months, they'll tell you that the pickup videos tend to be quite long and cover a lot of games over a myriad different systems. Now that's not to say that I don't have plenty to show off in this pickups video. I do, ranging from PlayStation 3 right down to, well, let's just call that a mystery machine at the moment, because I did stumble onto something out in the wild for quite a good price, and I'm really looking forward to showing you that. But as always, I'm going to start with the modern games first and move my way back through to that juicy retro at the end. And to start with, well, we'll start with the PlayStation 3, and I only picked up one game for the PlayStation 3 this month, and that is Portal 2. Now, I haven't played Portal before, so I won't be talking about it, and I haven't played Portal 2 before, so I can't talk about that either. But I do have both of them in the collection now, and it's not that I don't like puzzle games, it's not that I don't like Valve, despite how poorly sometimes they treat their IPs, but it's just simply I never get round to these games back in the time. But now they're here, both of them, I'll play them back to back and see if they truly are the games that everyone raves about. So that's Portal 2 in the collection for the PlayStation 3. Second up, we're staying at the same generation but moving on to a different console, and that being the Xbox 360. And the game that I picked up for the 360 this month is Ninja Blade, the From Software game that is only on Xbox, and that's obviously why I picked it up, because the main focus of my collection is Sony. I do have other bits and pieces, as you may notice, but at the moment, if it's coming out on something like the Xbox, it has to be only on Xbox, or maybe the only way that I can find that game out in the wild. But enough of that, onto the game itself. It's a game that I haven't played, it's From Software, so I'm expecting this is an early Souls-like game. I don't know, haven't played it, but I know someone who is about to review it properly, and that's the wonderful Hapesa Games. And you know what, I'll leave a link to his channel in the description, maybe even pop something up there so you can have a link to his channel, because he will go through this with a fine-tooth comb, and probably long before I get round to playing it. And that's Ninja Blade coming into the collection for the Xbox 360. Moving on to the next game, we're stepping down a generation and we're going to the PlayStation 2, which most of you out there will all know is the home and the heart of my collection at the moment. And I've only bought 2 games this month for the PlayStation 2, which that's probably going to be a surprise for you, because normally the pickups videos when it comes to PlayStation 2 are, well, a pile that high and it takes about an hour to get through them. But only 2 this month, and the first one is Goblin Commander. Now, I had no idea what this game is. Just saw it out in the wild, loved the artwork, had a look at the back. It looks a bit like a dungeon crawler RPG, don't know if that's the case, but when it's something out in the wild that you see that you've never seen before, especially when it's PlayStation 2 for me, it's usually something that I have to pick up. Now, I will be ruling back on that. I'm getting to the stage in the collection where I'm looking at being a bit more choosy, a bit more picky when it comes to the games that I'm picking up. But Goblin Commander still caught my attention, and I had no option but to pick it up when I saw it out there for a relatively cheap price. And it will probably feature in one of my bargain bin game reviews, so keep your eyes open for that. That's Goblin Commander on the PlayStation 2. Next up and last up for the PlayStation 2 is a game that was recommended. Now, I'm not sure the person who recommended this game would be happy to be called out for recommending this game, but I'm going to anyway because it was the wonderful Retro Bear. Of course, I'll put a pin up there and down in the description there'll be links to Retro Bear. And he, over the course of PlayStation month, he played this game and he did sing the praises of this game, which forced me into buying it, because I do Well, I respect his opinion when it comes to games, and that is this here Hello Kitty Roller Rescue. Yes, it's not the type of game you'd expect me to pick up to put into my collection, other than it being a PlayStation 2 game, but I don't have a single example of a game like this in the collection. And when the Retro Bear recommended it and I saw some gameplay, the gameplay does look solid for what it is. I just had to pick this up as an example of a game or a type of game that I don't have up there anyway. So that's Hello Kitty Roller Rescue, recommended by the Retro Bear, coming into the collection. Now next up, we're moving down a generation and we're moving to the PlayStation, and I picked up a game, or I should say I picked up two games that I really need in the collection, games that I really want in the collection. These are games that are important to me. And you realise why it's one game but two games, because it's a Final Fantasy anthology, which has Final Fantasy 4 and 5 in there. So that's now bringing the Final Fantasy collection for me at the moment up to 1 and 2 on Origins, 4 and 5 on this. I have 6, 7, 8 and 9 on the PlayStation. I've got 10, 10-2, 12, and I think that's it on the PlayStation 2 at the moment. 13, 13-2 and 13 Lightning Returns on the PlayStation 3, as well as Final Fantasy 14 on the PlayStation 3. Final Fantasy 11 I have on PC because I don't think that came out on a PlayStation console. I think that was PC only. I'll dig into that anyway. And then I've got on the PlayStation 4, I've got 15, I've got 12 again, the remastered 12, 8 remastered on the PlayStation 4 as well, and Final Fantasy Origin, A Stranger of Paradise on the PlayStation 4, and I think, the Final Fantasy 7 remake on PlayStation 4 as well as a digital download for the DLC for that, but that's beside the point. So that's pretty much the state of the Final Fantasy collection at the moment. It is a collection that I will be going for and trying to get complete. That's all Final Fantasies on the PlayStation, and then I'll start probably chipping away at other systems too, but that's when it's going to get super pricey probably. But at the moment, there we go, that's the Final Fantasy collection, and I'll probably throw in some B-roll just so you can see what exactly I have in the Final Fantasy collection at the moment. But so happy to get Final Fantasy Anthology in to the collection eventually, and let me tell you, this was for a really good price. This was way below eBay prices out there, so I was happy with that. Final Fantasy Anthology, that's 4 and 5 on the PlayStation. So next up, we're moving down a generation. Well, at least we're moving down a generation in terms of games, not so much in the machine that you play it on, although the machine that you play it on is proper retro, and that is the Core Graphics FX. This is the PC Engine Mini, which was of course called the Turbo Graphics over in North America, but over here in the UK and probably the rest of Europe, it was the Core Graphics FX. And yes, it's another one of those wonderful mini consoles that comes preloaded with a whole host of games. And this one, well, it's no exception, but there is a special exception, because this block of games that you see here at the top, these are all Japanese release only games, so there's a lot of shooters, a lot of shmups if you want to call them that, on this, and of course other platforming games that you don't really need to learn Japanese to play. You can dive in and play despite the language barrier. At the bottom is a list of games that you had that were North American or European releases, so we can play them just the thing. Now the only small caveat, the only small thing that really niggles me about this machine is up here in the Japanese releases we have the game Snatcher, a game that I would truly love to play. I've never played it, never had the opportunity to play it. I thought I would have had the opportunity to play it with this, but unfortunately it's up here on the Japanese releases, and anyone who knows Snatcher knows it's a text-based game, so unless you learn Japanese, you're not playing Snatcher on this Core Graphics Mini, which is a shame. It does have a lot of wonderful games on it. It has Ease 1 and 2, it has Bonk's Adventure, JJ and Jeff, there's too many to go on. I will be throwing up some B-rolls just so you can see what's on it, but I'm so happy to get my hands on this little machine. It's another one of the mini consoles that you can hook up to your main TV and play retro games, proper retro games, classic games played on a different machine. and all from the comfort of your couch without having to pay an absolute fortune for the original hardware and software. And when it comes to the PC Engine stuff, that is extremely pricey, and probably more so over here in the UK due to the fact that it wasn't a big deal to start with. So happy to have the PC Engine Core Graphics Mini in the collection. So next up, we're actually still moving down a generation, so down a generation again. And I'm picking up a game for a system that I don't have yet. It's a system that I didn't have back in the day that I'm starting to get a love for now. And the reason I'm starting to get a love for that particular system is due to a few content creators out there who put out some wonderful material on this particular machine. And those content creators are the likes of Ollie, 8-Bit Boy UK, and Tom at Sega Head, to mention just two. And the game that I picked up is for the Master System. It's my first Master System game, and it's Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Now, the reason I picked this up without having the Master System is I will bring a Master System into the collection at some point. I do want a Mark 1, I don't want the Mark 2. It just doesn't interest me. I want a Mark 1 Master System. I want it at a price that I'm happy to pay for it, which I'll eventually get round to and eventually find. But if I buy a game, at least to start the collection for the games, then I'm going to be more inclined to buy the machine itself. And this one was, well, it was under £4 out in the wild. Now, I don't know if that's a good price for Sonic 2, but this one came complete. As you see, the box is in decent condition. There's maybe a little bit of sun fading, but these games are, what, 30 odd years old? And inside, it came with a nice crisp manual. And of course, the cartridge was in lovely condition too. I've had the cartridge tested, it works wonderfully, and I just need to get a Master System to play it myself now on my own setup. But so happy to get the first Master System game into the collection, and that's Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So moving on, we have to go down a generation. That's right, down from Generation 3, which means Generation 2. Now, there's not a lot of machines out there in Generation 2, especially when you are over here in the UK. So you'll probably guess at the system that I'm going to be showing off, at least this time, for Generation 2. Now, I will go into a bit of a story about this one because I did find this out in the wild. Did not, however, find it in any brick and mortar store. There was no reseller store. It wasn't eBay. It wasn't charity shops, thrift shops, anything like that. Wasn't Facebook Marketplace. Nothing. I was out in the town. I was doing some game hunting myself. I was in a store, and a gentleman was trying to sell something, and the store he was in didn't buy this particular item, and I just so happened to be standing beside him, getting served at the same time as this gentleman, and I asked him what was it you were trying to sell at him, and he showed me. Well, obviously my interest was piqued, and I asked him how much that he was looking for to get for the item that he was trying to sell, and he said to me, I'm looking for about £15. Now, £15, if you're over in the UK, you'll know that's about the price of 3 pints, maybe 2.5, depending on which pub you go to these days. And over in the States, that's about $19, and in Canada, maybe about $22. So about $22 Canadian down to £15 cash over here. And what he was selling was this Atari 2600 Junior. Atari 2600 Junior in really, really nice condition. I mean, everything is looking lovely about it. It didn't even need a clean up. This is how I bought it. I haven't cleaned this, touched it at all. This is exactly how I got it. And of course, it came with the power supply, came with the joystick, it came with the RF lead to plug it into the TV. And this is what he was selling for £15. Well, when I say this is what he was selling for £15, that wasn't all he was selling for £15. No, for £15 he was selling that and a selection of games. Now, I'm not going to bring up the selection of games here. I'm going to show you some B-roll and we'll just have a look at the games. So as you can see, there was quite a selection of games in there. We had Circus Atari and Missile Command. That's two classics from back in the day that I remember playing. The 31-2 game cartridge, and I have no idea what's on that. I'll probably Google that at some point. I've had the games and these all work. So there's Super Breakout and Ghostbusters, and that's one I'm really looking forward to giving a go, because I loved Ghostbusters on the ZX Spectrum. I know it was a Marmite game for a lot of people, Ghostbusters of that particular generation, but I absolutely loved Ghostbusters on the Spectrum, and I'm looking forward to playing it on the Atari just to see the differences. Zaxxon, another classic shooter, F-14 Tomcat, Defender 2. Now Defender's one of my all-time favourite arcade games, so I was really happy to get Defender 2 in. Mario Brothers on the 2600, Universal Chaos, My Golf, and of course Kung Fu Master and Double Dragon, 2 classic arcade beat-em-ups. And the wonderful Californian Games, which has frustrated gamers multiple generations on multiple machines. So as you can see, it was quite an interesting bundle to get, along with the console, and the chat was only asking £15. Now, I only had £30 cash on me at the time, and I offered him that, and he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah, I want you to take this at least. If you're willing to take £30 for that, then I'm happy to take this machine and put it into a forever home." And he did quite happily take double what he was expecting, but I couldn't. I mean, I would have given him more. There's certainly worth more out there in the market, and especially knowing now that they work. I mean, I didn't know at the time whether they worked or not. The games all work, and the console works as well, so super happy to get that into the collection. And it's just one of those things that never really happened, and it happened. I wish it was the most spectacular thing to have happened out in YouTube world this last month, but Josh at Drinking Games with Josh, he found the motherload when it came to a thrift pickup, and you'll have to go and watch his video, and I will link that in the description just in case you haven't seen what he found out in a local North American charity shop basically, and what I find he had. But I was so happy with that. The Atari 2600, yes, I was wanting to bring one into the collection because I played one back in the day. I kind of wanted a Woody, because you know what, everybody wants a Woody, but I'll take the Junior just now, which was released in 1986, so I was about 13 at the time, and definitely on the Spectrum at that time. But at the moment, it's a nice placeholder. It'll stay even if I get a Woody in the future, because it is a nice variant of the machine. It does look quite nice. The way they made it look like the 7800, I thought was a nice touch for the budget version of Atari way later on in the 80s. Now, of course, I couldn't just settle with that bundle pickup, that wonderful bundle pickup at that wonderful price. I had to pick up a game for myself, a game that I need into the collection, that I want in the collection, that's very, very nostalgic for me, and that is Combat. Now, Combat is, anyone who will know, who knows Atari 2600, was this early war games compilation with tank and the plane games and stuff like that. Very, very basic, but it was the very first cartridge that was ever put on in front of me, the very first selection of games that I ever played in the Atari 2600, and it was the game that made me beg my parents for an Atari 2600 back in the early 80s. Now, I didn't get the 2600, I had to suffice going to my cousins to play that. I did, however, get the ZX Spectrum. Of course, I'm wonderfully happy that I got the ZX Spectrum, but now that I have my very own Atari 2600, I had to get Combat into the collection. There are a couple of other games out there that I'll want in similar condition, boxed, complete, but at the moment this is a good start because it was the first, and why not start with the first? Now, thank you very much for watching this pickups video. I hope I haven't dragged it on too long. Yes, it's not probably going to be as long, or it probably hasn't been as long as my usual ones. And if you want to talk about any of the games that you've seen today, or the systems for that matter, then please drop that down in the comments, because interaction between you and me is what makes YouTube worthwhile doing as far as I'm concerned. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, of course, cheerio!